Sherry Carpenter. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and today I would like to talk to you about some new innovations in the breast cancer research and some new studies that are being conducted here in the Dallas area that could be relevant to you. The reason it could be relevant to you is because according to breastcancer.org, 1 in 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime. That's pretty high statistics if you think about 8 women that you know. At least one of them in their lifetime will have breast cancer. There's a few studies that are being conducted here in the Dallas area. I was involved in them, and I would like to give my first-hand account of those studies. One of them is the Paxman Cool Cap study, which is basically a hair loss prevention study. Another is Fit Steps for Life fitness program. And the third thing I would like to talk about today is BRCA1 testing that you may or may not be familiar with, and I'll explain more about that further on. The first thing I would like to discuss with you is the Paxman Cool Cap study. And this is a picture of me actually during chemo with the cap on. And what this study is, it's a randomized hair loss prevention study. Is being conducted here in the United States right now. It is no cost to the patient, and that's in exchange for the patient's participation in the study. And it's currently being offered in the UK in about 80% of their oncology centers, according to Market Wired in 2015. The device was developed by a British entrepreneur when his wife was undergoing chemotherapy in the late 1990s. The device works by reducing blood flow to the follicles to help reduce chemotherapy alopecia. The patient wears the cap for about 2.5 hours during treatment, and there's about 100,000 patients that have used the cap since 1997 in 32 different countries. I'm going to explain a little bit about the cap and how it works, because I know it's probably not something that most of you are familiar with. The cap, when you go into chemotherapy, the patient their hair has to be wet, so they'll wet the hair. They usually will give you a couple of Tylenol right before this is administered. Then they put the cap on. And if you notice, there's a hose here. It goes down to this cooling unit, and it basically keeps everything circulated. There's some coils up in the cap that coolant is circulating through the whole time that you're in chemo. And it basically gives you a headache. It's very, very, very cold. As a matter of fact, when the cap comes off at the end, usually there's icicles in your hair underneath the cap. The cap does work. For me, it was probably about a 50% success. I think they're still trying to perfect the process for women, but I still ended up having to wear scarves and things like that because it was not a total success. It was a patchy success for me. But like I said, they are still trying to perfect that. Another thing I would like to talk to you about today is the Fit Steps for Life program that's being offered also down at the Baylor Sammons Cancer Center in Dallas. This particular study is an exercise study, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to see if a few minutes of exercise immediately before a chemo treatment will affect the patient positively as far as their psychological and physical health. So I was a part of the study. What they do basically is you go in and you work on a treadmill for about 20 minutes, and then you go directly into your chemotherapy treatment. There's also a questionnaire that usually will accompany that. When you go in to do your exercise, you have to answer a questionnaire that would ask certain questions about your health as far as what you're eating, have you being able to sleep properly, are you exercising, what's your mental health status like. I unfortunately was in the control group, so I was not able to do the exercise the 20 minutes before my chemotherapy. I was allowed to exercise anytime outside of that 20 minutes, but the 20 minutes before, I just worked on the questionnaire only. So I'm hoping this is a study that could potentially help people in the future, depending on their findings from the study. Hopefully they'll find out that exercise is truly a great help to women that are undergoing chemotherapy. Lastly, today I want to discuss the BRCA1 testing. BRCA1 is testing is a genetic test to see if you have a family predisposition towards breast cancer. You may have heard of this because Angelina Jolie was in the media recently having had this test done, and she underwent double mastectomy. And she didn't have cancer, but because she tested positive on the BRCA1 testing, she elected to have the double mastectomy. And you may ask yourself, why would somebody do that? When they don't have breast cancer, what would be their motivation to go ahead and have something as drastic as a mastectomy? But according to cancer.gov, 55 to 65% of women who test positive for the BRCA1 gene mutation will develop breast cancer. That's 55 to 65%. It's pretty high, and that could explain why she wanted to go ahead and do that, because she knew down the line most likely she was going to get breast cancer. Another thing you want to keep in mind about the BRCA1 testing is if you test positive, there's a very high likelihood that you would pass this gene mutation down to your children. So if you test positive, you want to inform your children and your family members so that they can go and be tested as well, so that they don't, they have options. So today I've shared with you several pieces of information that could be helpful if you or any one of your loved ones is diagnosed. I really hope that you never know anyone that has breast cancer, but chances are you will. But hopefully you'll be comforted knowing that there are testings and ways that our medical community is trying to help those that are diagnosed. And I thank you for your time. Thank you so much.